Hi everyone, thanks for staying with us today. To conclude the media and advertising track, we're going to have a CEO panel, the AdPulse CEO panel. Already today we've had CEOs speaking about technology in areas outside of their core business. This panel, they're definitely within their core business. So CEOs talking about the future of the advertising agency. Can you welcome on stage the CEO and founder of ArabNet, Omar Christidis, to introduce the panel.
Thank you all for joining us, and I'd like to invite my panelists as well. Filip, Jabbour, CEO at MENA of GroupM. Jabbour, President of the Advertising Association and CEO of MCN Lebanon. And Elda, CEO of MENA PhD. Welcome and join me. إذا بتحبوا ما ضروري. So let's get a quick sense of our room. How many people here are at an agency? If you'll please raise your hand. Okay. How many people are at a client or a brand, a marketing person? Okay. How many people are publishers? Publishers. Okay, so great. I think the largest portion of our audience is agencies. So this is really quite relevant for you, since we're discussing really the future of the agency. If I were to take it to the extreme, it would be the question of whether agencies will continue to exist. We won't start there, but we'll start by saying the agency is under a lot of pressure from all sides. From one side, the client, who's facing a lot of challenging economic times and is pushing for more and more efficiency and direct tie to ROI. From the publisher side, Google and Facebook, capturing 65% of digital revenues and increasingly pushing for more and more budgets from the agencies. Dollars moving, shifting away from traditional into digital media, where the margins might be lower, the production budgets are lower, clients pushing for more content, less production value. So a lot of pressures on the agency. And I'll start by asking today, how do you see the revenues within the agency shifting? What lines of business and services do you see growing for the agency in the future? What kind of lines of business do you see shrinking? And are there new lines of business that you think the agency will get into in the future? You want to start, Elda?
We're throwing the balls. Okay, I'll start. The question, I mean, I kind of argued with you just before coming in. Why are we asking the question of where are the revenues shifting? Is that correct? That's the question.
Yes. Where are the revenues shifting? What's in decline and what's on the rise?
Yeah, I think I would argue the question itself, whether we should say where are the revenues coming from or where are they shifting. I think the industries that we see today are flourishing are industries that don't think about revenues. They think about consumers. They think about the consumer experience. And they don't think about, and then you see, companies like Snapchat, companies like YouTube, they started, for 10 years they didn't make money. And then they started thinking, how can we monetize our services? I think we need to fundamentally stop thinking about the revenues and start thinking about, what should change in the product? What should change in the service of the agency that could potentially deliver on revenues and profitability. I think the money will come. Fundamentally, we need to...
I'll push you on this, right? Which is to say, great, let's not talk about revenues. The reason why Snapchat can do this is very different, right? It's a very mass, scalable business. But for us today, let's talk then about what services will the agency provide that the client will want, and what services are less interesting for the client more and more. And sorry, okay. George.
Maybe I will look at things in a different way. So basically, why we are here today? We are here today because basically there is a threat on our industry. We think what is going to happen to the advertising industry? Is advertising going to die? So if advertising is going to die, why are you all here today? So I think there is here something very important to mention. Before talking about revenues, we have to talk about the agency itself. And the topic of today is the agency of the future. When we talk about the agency of the future, what is future? Future, we're sure that the future is going to be different than today. And there's going to be a change. This change has always been there, but today the change is faster. It's going at a higher pace. What about the agency? If you look at the agency has been there for more than 1 century. And we are asking today the question just because the internet, which has invaded our life, our businesses, our daily things. As the agency has adapted to the new media at a certain point in time, which are press, radio, TV, today there is a new medium, or there was a new medium, because after all today it's part of our life, and the agency should adapt. So the agency of the future, in one word, would be the agency who can adapt to the change. Adapt to the change. We adapt or we die. That's it. The revenues, the agency will continue to service in terms of creativity, in terms of strategy, but in a different way. And the revenues will also be driven from the same sources that we used to do before. What is changing are the vehicles. But
so can you be a bit more specific on the vehicles then?
Yes, the vehicles today, let's say, if we go back in history, how did advertising start? We had the posters, Toulouse-Lautrec, etc. Then we had the press. The agency adapted to the press, to the print. We had the radio, the TV. How the TV started? You remember, you have these documentaries about Ronald Reagan selling washing machines in the 50s. The TV was used in that way. Then we moved in the 90s and 2000 to the movies. We had TVCs which have become movies. Today with the internet has invaded our life, and agencies are still adapting to this new medium that entered our life in the 90s. And what we're doing today, if we see the evolution on how we adapted our creativity throughout the past 20 years, it's incredible. How we can translate this into revenues? This is the question. And I think here agencies are making a big mistake since the introduction of fees. We are charging on time, while we should charge on talents. We should charge on efficiency. And today the internet and all the media derived from this new vehicle are pushing us to effectiveness instead of deliveries. What we used to do, it used to be deliveries. Now we are more and more paid for the effectiveness of the communication we're giving. We have to change our model by thinking differently. If we don't change the thinking, nothing is going to change, and the revenue will continue to be going down and down.
Filip, I'm going to give it over to you, and I'm going to ask you to try to be more specific, because I have right now that the agency of the future is agile and needs to be agile, but how does that really take shape into concrete new models of services or revenues?
Filip Jabbour, no relation to George.
Sorry.
I think we're worrying too much about labels. It's like getting your shirt out of the laundry with a lot of bloodstains, and you're worried about the kind of detergent you're using rather than the fights that got you the blood. Agency of the future, if you ask me bluntly, I don't know what the agency of the future. I do know that the agency of the present does not look like it should look. Okay.
In what way does the agency of today not look like it should?
Listen, the simple question mark is if you want to communicate properly to the consumers, you need to be able to leverage enough data points and monetize enough content to give them the right message at the right time, right? Simplistically. What changed in our lives is technology, right? It didn't change human nature. The agency still needs to exist. All the automation that is happening cannot happen without the presence of humans, right? By definition, we are social. We always were social. We always were curious, except that now with more wires and more pipes and longer battery life, we're being social faster and more publicly and in a different way, right? So what we're trying to identify is what are the revenue streams, what you call them, I call them touch points to reach our consumers, and how can we structurally change it? But I don't think it's an endemic problem that the agencies, unless they don't change, are facing, because we've lived in an era of change. I mean, George was talking about the press and the radio, and we've always had that. We just now have more exposure and more visibility as to what we need to do, and definitely we're far from doing it. And that requires a big change in education, a big change in mindset, less democratization of our assets, and I think we'll be fine. But I wouldn't say necessarily that the agency is in turmoil. It's just that it's going to get a new shape and a new format to evolve.
Well, maybe let's shift gears then, right? Let's talk about the client. How are client expectations changing with the arrival of the internet and the changing consumer behavior at the end of the day, changing behavior on purchases and where purchases take place, on expectations of or mobility or ease or 24/7 on demand? I mean, these are all the things that are happening on the level of the consumer. How are the brands changing what they want from their agencies and the relationship with their agencies? Anyone want to take a stab at that one? Elda.
I think that the demand from the client hasn't changed yet.
Okay.
I think we're going to see a huge. I think we're going to see a huge change in the future, because we're talking here about the transformation of agencies and what's the future of agencies. But the reality is, every industry is being disrupted. Every industry in every sector is being disrupted. So our clients' businesses are also under pressure, not only our businesses. So when you look at luxury, when you look at retail, when you look at banking, there are question marks today whether a bank needs to exist in the future with blockchain technology. Whether hotels are going to continue are going to sustain their businesses with the presence of the Airbnbs of the world. So as clients' businesses and those legacy businesses transform, we also will transform. What their demands will be, I think it will be. There's a huge demand today for what we call automation on the client side as well as on agency side. So the blockchain technology is all about that. You're automating the world. You're automating the company's infrastructure completely. You're talking about, what about automation on the agency side? What happens when agencies are automated? So what would people at the agency do? So the roles of people sitting in the agency today, they will not be the same in the future. We'll see more strategists. We'll see more emphasis on creativity. You'll see when you talk about content, it's not the content that we talk about today, the snackable content. When you talk about technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality, that's a whole different world of content that needs to be created. Who's going to create that? What kind of specialists need to create that? What kind of technical skill set do you need? So these are completely different roles that we're going to see in the future. It's very difficult to imagine this today because these technologies, they haven't picked up yet. So, they're not mass. How do you say, the adoption is not mass yet. But as there are, I think, 7 or 8 technologies that are going to change the way we live our lives in the next 8 years. So, and as they do that, consumer behavior will change, clients' businesses will change, and we have to change as well.
Clients want accountability. They always have. They always will. The difference is that with technology today, they have a faster and a closer line of sight between the investment that's being made and the sales, all the way up to sales, right? And that line was never clearer, as clear as can be at least. And so the onus is on us now to be able to provide those solutions. People talk about automation and technology, but you also want to make sure that you're not seeing the woods for the trees. You have to focus. Technologies that have failed in our industry are the ones that have lost sight of the human need that they were meant to serve and fulfill. So the automation of technology that we need to implement and we need to make sure that we provide to come out with a solution is one that provides that accountability for our clients. Because the loyalty timeline and the brand building and awareness building timeline that we came into this industry learning of how it needs to be built and what is the time frame has all of a sudden shrunk. And that's why in a number of cases a lot of the clients are moving prematurely sometimes into the performance stage very quickly because there's an outcome that they can see.
Right, and so really interesting, right? We got to close the gap or close shorten the distance between, show more measurability between the campaign and the return on investment for the business on the sales side, directly.
Yes.
You had something to add, George.
Yes, so basically what you said here, it's talking more about efficiency. And the client, I think, when we talk what the client needs from an agency and how the relationship should be between the client and the agency, here the technology has nothing to do because after all the technology is something that entered our life and the life of the client. But why a client does he need an agency? He needs an agency, let's go back to the basics. And I think Elda mentioned this. He needs an agency for strategy, for the creativity, for the service, and more importantly, for the efficiency. This efficiency is the only way to translate into figures, into sales, into market share, and that's why how we should deliver this efficiency to the client, this is where we have to use the new technology in order to improve our tools and give more and more and more effectiveness when it comes to their campaigns.
So what about activities that you're doing today that you think the client will take in-house in the future? Are there activities that you think will take place there? And if that you don't agree with, maybe a different angle is, Elda was talking about our clients' businesses being disrupted. What is the role of the agency to help the client kind of keep up with that disruption? So either or of the questions.
I think we need to stop thinking of ourselves as agency people, and I think we need to start thinking like consultants. We need to start being advisors. So if you take a step backwards or sideways, just a step away from that focal point where we stand, and we think, okay, so what does the client need? And every time as an agency, whether today or 10 years ago or in the next 10 years, every time we think in a way that is oriented towards what clients need, we succeed. Because our job is to facilitate and to help clients grow. If their growth and their operation makes more sense for them to pull in some resources in-house, then that's what we should advise them and even facilitate for them. And we've done this in the past. I mean, how often have agencies, and we've seen it in Dubai, how often have we went to clients and we seconded a person to sit at the client's offices and help the rest of the team? We've seen this before. How often have we brought in some of the clients and we trained them and we educated them on what we do? There has been this kind of exchange. I think the future, maybe this kind of exchange will morph into something bigger. Maybe they'll pull in performance inside the client side, or social, or maybe
social in many places is moving to the client side,
I mean,
right?
If it makes sense.
So
but
definitely social, I think, is one.
It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. No. Some clients' businesses may require that. Some may not. So we can't think of, if this is the trend, then everybody's going in that trend.
And no, of course, we're not going to have a hard and fast rule, but we see a large amount of clients, or a large amount of, considering and or moving social media in-house. Are there other things that you might expect them to take in-house in the future?
Just one comment.
Social is a big word.
Just one thing. Before the reason why you see it today and you didn't see it before is because the skill set wasn't there. So if they were able to have them in-house, they would have. But it always made sense before and today for certain clients, not for everyone. Sorry, Philip.
I was going to say social is a big word. Listen, I mean, the stuff that gets moved in-house is a function of our failure to provide the right solution, and they should move it in-house if we don't. It's as simple as that, right?
George.
But,
sorry. George.
No, sorry.
I mean, social in itself is a big word. There's multiple areas of social, some of which we should provide the proper solution and integrate it with the rest of the communication touch points, and others that have to be managed within the client organization or otherwise. I don't think it's like one or the other, or there's a big threat that there's stuff that's moving in-house. Definitely there is, but if the stuff makes sense for the business, makes sense for their business and ours in the partnership that we need to be working with them to provide that accountability, so be it.
George.
Talking about clients having some services that are being done in-house is not a new thing. It has been there for a long time, it is now, and it will continue to be. It depends on the demand and offer between the client and the agency, what we are offering them and what they do need. After all, this is something that relates to the internal decision at the client level. So from our side as agency should be adaptable to any need when it comes to a client, because not all the clients are the same, not all the clients' needs are the same. So this is where the agency role is there. Again, you might see an agency, a client doing social media inside, in-house, or some other who will deliver this to the agency. So basically here, the agency role is very important when it comes to giving the right service with the right efficiency. That's it.
So let's shift gears again. Elda mentioned what are some of the skill sets that need to be in the agency of the future.
Yes.
She talked about creativity, but I want to hear more, because sometimes I hear the agency of the future is going to be full of geeks and number crunchers. Do you guys agree with this? Disagree with it?
Have you seen Revenge of the Nerds?
Maybe it is the revenge of the nerds in the agency, right? I mean, data is becoming such a critical part of what especially media agencies do, and that we are starting to see more and more data scientists in an agency context, right? And I'm guessing we expect to see more, but I'd like to hear if you agree or disagree, and what skills you do think are needed in the future of the agency. Go ahead,
okay.
George. Do it.
So, sorry. In an agency, basically, this has been always a dilemma. Is it a science or an art? In a nutshell, it could be the art of the science or the science of the art. So it's not the revenge of the nerds or the way around. Data is today one of the main ingredients we do need, and it has always been the major ingredients whenever we had to put any strategy. Still, creativity is the cherry on top that we should sell, because after all, we're not data providers. This is not the role of the agency. If you were data providers, anyone can be a data provider. We have the research company.
Not a provider.
No.
But an aggregator, analyzer, driver,
so this is
all of these things.
No, analyzer, but plus we need to add our insights, which are mainly, these insights are transformed into a concept within our laboratory, which is the creative laboratory. And this is where it comes. We have been consultants. The more we are consultants, our revenues will grow. The more we become traders, our revenues will shrink. So we are the consultants. We are seeing today the agencies losing their role as consultants to the new consultants company growing here and there, which we never heard about 20 years ago. So let's not lose our core business. We are the consultants. We will remain the consultants. We are not traders. Today we have a new medium. Yes, the new medium is going to change the trade maybe, but not the consultancy and the core business we're doing. We just need to adapt to this new medium, and that's it.
So, a quick question to the audience. Marketing, more science than art or more art than science? More science than art. Raise your hand, please. More science than art. More art than science. Okay.
So
Right
you
about
see,
50-50, maybe 60-40.
That's the problem with our industry.
Sorry?
That's the problem of our industry.
It's actually funny because I can see the people who are in digital raise their hand for more science than art. And I see the DMS guys for sure. And then I see other creatives raising their hand for more creative than...
I can add something. This is the uniqueness of our industry, not only the problem, because after all, it's, you cannot see any business where you have this equilibrium between science and art.
Filip.
Yeah, I want to approach your question in a different way.
Sure.
Just cover it from two angles. One, talking about change and how, you asked about skill sets, the type of skill sets that we need to have, not from, what's the title on a business card, but rather what drives it. And number two, talking about, I think, the big pressure we have as an industry that's not just on the agencies, but all the different constituents. So let me start with the first. And the first, I want to go back to, for some of you that saw the fireside chat with Snapchat, where they were talking about them being a camera company. And it just reminded me of something that happened to me 2 months ago, which kind of almost brings it to perspective for me. I bought my 5-year-old daughter a Christmas present. It was an Elsa frozen digital camera. And probably took her 5 to 10 minutes to learn how to do it, and she was good. And somebody walked in the room, they asked her, what did you get for Christmas? And she said, I got a phone. So if you think about how this new generation, that a lot of them are already in their shopping years, are thinking, that should be the starting point for what kind of skill sets and what kind of talent that you need to bring into the agency world, because that's definitely not how I think or how any of us think. Probably a lot of you do, right? So that's number one in terms of what is driving the change. The second point is the biggest pressure that is facing our industry is the pressure on ad-supported premium content networks and platforms. Okay? In the past, if you're a publisher, you own a magazine, you own a TV station, you're king. Then we moved into the era, if you own the content, you're king. Now it's who owns the premium content. The premium content comes from everywhere, right? But with the advent of Netflix and Amazon, and all of these players that are bringing solid content, and YouTube from the other side, there's an imbalance of commercial dollars that are going behind the traditional media players, whatever they may be, and these new forms of media. Because in a way, you take Amazon, for example, and Amazon Prime, they will get you as a customer, they'll provide you with quality content, they can afford to drive margins as low as they need to, because they don't care about making money there. You're going to be buying your next DVD and your next washer and your next car from them. And that's the biggest pressure, and that's what we need to crack, but it's not just the agencies alone. As an industry, is how we change that imbalance of where the current monetization and revenue is being spent by the clients, by us, and on which mediums.
So, e-commerce. A lot of agencies I'm talking to, a lot of brands, everybody is thinking about e-commerce these days. And we had OMD launch OMD Transact, which is their kind of push into e-commerce. I hear a lot of other agencies talking about it. Where do you see the role of the agency in e-commerce? I'm curious.
I think it depends again on clients. When you talk about e-commerce, I don't think e-commerce has hit I think we're, in our region specifically, we're going to see a massive explosion of e-commerce, I think, going forward. We started now, but we'll see more in the future. When you talk about certain industries, like talk about FMCG, talk about maybe the least would be the retail. Some we're quite advanced, some we're not. How agencies, the agency role, I think, is going to be critical to some, but some already have their own in-house performance planners and traders and so on. So the e-commerce bit is for me is still a question mark. I think that there is a role that an agency can play with e-commerce, especially because of the complexity of the ecosystem. But it will depend on how the client is structured. That's what I think.
Do you consider e-commerce to be a consumer touch point?
Sure.
Then we should learn how to do it. But what about e-commerce that we should learn how to do? Because e-commerce goes all the way from planning to targeting all the way to fulfillment. Yeah.
Providing this as a service?
I don't think we're going fast enough, and I think in a lot of the times we're confusing or conveniently substituting the word e-commerce for performance for e-commerce. So because this requires investment, and this requires the identification of what is it about the e-commerce chain, from concept to implementation and fulfillment, that we can bring added value to.
Awesome. Can you answer that one?
No, definitely not. That's George's.
Right. Because today we know that the agencies are working on the marketing conversion side. That's great. But I understand that people want to get more involved in the, at least, building and setup of an actual store and powering of an actual store, all the way through if you're talking about consultancies, potentially even supply chain or logistics management. Maybe that's a stretch, but certainly today within the capabilities of the agency, you could build and deliver on an actual e-commerce website and platform.
I would say yes and no, because it's
Okay.
really, it's not that simple. It's really complex. I think to do it right, you'll have to work with so many different partners. Think about payment. Agencies, you'll have to work with a partner. So you'll have to rely on partners, on technologies, on tools, and on agencies for a specific, everyone will have a role in that ecosystem or structure of,
I'm going to push what you guys said, which is we're a role of a consultant. And today these consultants are coming and they're eating our lunch, right? These consultants are about to provide a full service e-commerce solution for these customers,
Yes,
right?
true.
You want to capture that business.
Let them
how
capture.
are they doing that?
They're hiring people, they're doing the partnerships with the Shopifys of the world, with the payment providers of the world, and they're coming to the client and saying, we'll remove this headache from you. We've got all this value chain set up, and we'll give you an A to Z solution.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears once again.
Let them do it. Let them do it.
No, I mean,
No, but
look,
the-
this is a new space, and we all know this. And
Yes,
I know
sure.
that the questions I'm asking, there are not easy answers for them. So I know, and I'm pushing you because for the sake of all of us and our audience, and I hope you appreciate that from my side. But I think these are all questions that aren't clear quite yet.
But okay, I have
Yes,
something
please,
to say
Elda.
about the consultancies. The world of consultancies, the value of the world of consultancies is what? $20 billion in the world. The world of advertising is how much? More than $500 billion. Sorry. So it's $20 billion. That's the world of consultancies. You have $500 billion. That's the world of advertising, right?
I don't know where the
So
valuation
if
of
I
the
were a
consultant.
consultant, of course I want a piece of this pie. How else am I going to grow? And I think the fact that consultancies are interested in our industry and in entering and venturing into the media and the advertising is just to say that this is an industry that is going to stay. Maybe it will be reshaped, but I think they want a piece of this pie because it's a much, much bigger pie.
Very interesting. So the last thing I wanted to ask is the broader structure of the industry, right? Once was a time when you had one agency and it delivered advertising and media and everything in between. Then we split, and now we see, again, customers asking for a single touch point or a single experience. Do we expect to see remergers in this space? Do we expect to see mergers and acquisitions in this space? What kind of activity do we expect here?
Yes, yes, and yes.
And then, on just 1 second, prepare the audience for questions. If you have questions, we're going to take questions after the answer to this. And Filip, you were saying yes, so let's...
I mean, it's an economic inevitability. Mergers and acquisitions, everything is consolidating, everything is moving. Regarding clients wanting one touch point, this is already happening. It's, you kind of almost feel, especially for old timers like me, as if you're going full circle and your whole career seems like a waste. Because we're going back to 1994 for me. Yeah, of course there will be opportunities for mergers and acquisitions to bring the various aspects closer together. Consultants do a great job in terms of carving a niche for themselves in our industry, not just here in the market, but globally. But they miss a lot of the parts that we end up taking all the way up to fulfillment. They can either build that capability or buy something out. It's not rocket science. It's a potential inevitability if they can afford it. And it's a choice that they're going to make, just like we have a choice of stepping our game and, as you said, take a bigger piece of the pie that I think we lost over the past few years.
You guys have different perspectives on this. George, please.
As you said, before there was one agency delivering all services together, one touch point. Then, as we said before, due to the market needs, we adapted. We had agencies delivering services, media, PR, creative, etc., etc. Now, maybe there are many factors and many parameters that are pushing us to not go back to the previous model. I don't say that it is it's not anymore the previous model. It's a kind of one brand with one agency experience. Because after all, today, in the digital era, we need a lot of coordination, collaboration, integration when it comes to media versus content, social media, etc. All the aspects of the digital era are forcing teams to work together. So from here, yes, some clients are starting to ask to have this one agency experience, and we're adapting by it. While I think we will have the old formula and the new formula all together. It's going to be very flexible for the time till things will become clearer in the near future.
Great. I am going to turn over the floor questions. Where can I have some questions? Okay, I see. Gentleman right there. Start there. Once I call you, keep your hand up so that the microphones can find you.
Hello, this is Elias. I just want to ask, when you're thinking of, I actually have two questions. When you're thinking about hiring someone in your agencies, you don't think about having someone involved actually with the community and trying to learn from the new habits, new trends, very young people, where they can take these the new habits that are changing every day. Today, 2 years ago, we had only Instagram. Now we have Telegram. After a while, we have Snapchat. Everything is changing very fast. Are you being able to accommodate to all this change very fast? And another question: an agency shouldn't an agency be able to adapt or work with website providers, e-commerce providers, to have a full chain of services? We go to one place, we know that these people are trustworthy, and then we can get the full package from you guys?
It's called Google.
Anyone?
I answered the first question before, so.
I think we have addressed actually these questions. I think we said that the agency needs to be flexible in order to stay adaptive and keep up with change. And then I think we shelved the question of e-commerce and the partnerships. Yeah. So I'll take another question. Gentleman over there with the hat. Yes.
Well, it's good the hat comes in handy. My question is mostly about right now startups like myself and everyone else really. We're going more towards growth hacking, and instead of siloed. As you said, partnership with a website company, a partnership with a graphics design company, etc. Right now, we're looking at cross-functional teams that work together for growth hacking, such like Airbnb. That was one of the keys to their success. Uber, same thing. And what I have not found in Lebanon, which is why I've had to go outside, is agencies that are able to actually provide you a growth hacking experience where they look at the data and then they have the team, manpower, and talent on board to turn that into growth hacking rather than general advertising on Facebook, events, etc. So how are you going to adapt to this growth hacking culture? Because every accelerator I know encourages it.
Okay, I'm going to take another question. Where can I have Michel. I think growth hacking is kind of just outside of the realm of the agencies that we're talking about here, unless you guys want to comment specifically on this.
I just want to say one thing. The one thing I do agree with him is that, and I'm sure we've dipped it and worked a bit with startups is having a closer collaboration and seeking them out as far as agencies are concerned to the startups, because I think there's a lot of wealth in some places that we might have missed certain opportunities. I definitely think that there's room to grow as well, for sure.
Okay. Michel.
So tech has enabled personalized marketing for clients. And the key to that is data. Now, data lies at core at the client side. So CRM, different data touch points, even campaign data. So we're seeing that the client, if he is controlling his own data to go and start doing personalized campaign, with automation, less and less there's a need for an agency role to play in that sphere. Now, it's good to point out that you guys handling the media agency, historically it's been overweighted to the conversation with the clients has been overweighted to your side. Are we seeing going into the coming few years an underweight on you and an overweight on the creative agencies instead, knowing that the clients now are more in control of the rest of the equation?
What do you guys think?
I personally think that what we have inside the agency, the roles, the typical planner, the typical trader, I don't think these people as a role will exist in the future. I think we will see more data analysts, we will see more strategists. But when we say strategy, we don't mean the same strategy that we do today. It's every single role will have to depend on data, and I think yeah, the clients always had data. What have they done with it? And I think until today, as humans, whether you sit on the client side or you sit on the agency side, we don't have the ability to crunch the massive amount of data that we have at our disposal. What we need to do is we need to use technology, which is similar to machine learning, for example, to crunch the data and to come up with these insights. What we do with these insights is what strategists need to figure out. So what we see, again, it's not the same landscape. It's not the same kind of DNA that will survive in the future.
Anyone want to add something? Filip?
I fully agree with her. I just want to add to your second question about the overweight, underweight bit. I think the whole ecosystem of holding groups and agency groups and everything, and the way that clients are looking into creating brand teams and client teams is meant to address that. And so irrespective where the focus or where the weight of the conversations are, I think that becomes addressed once you have one team talking about everything. And just one more thing about the data that the clients hold. They always had data. Their first-party data is always more valuable than anything else. But clearly that would not be sufficient, because it's like reaching the same people over and over again. And if you want to grow, you need to look elsewhere. And on your comment on e-commerce, Omar, we didn't shelve it. We're working on it.
Great. We're working on it. That's the key takeaway. I have a question in the back. And then I have a question. I saw one here. Yes, just there.
Hello. I think Michelle asked the question I was going to ask, but I need to add something to it. You've been mentioning data, and I'm not sure if the mic is clear. You've been mentioning data and the utilization of data and all that. Today, artificial intelligence, and to name, for example, Watson and Einstein, are using to crunch this data and provide it with easy access to everybody in the market. Not just that, they're also providing tools to monitor the customer's journey across different touch points, and then provide that feedback back to the client, and then they can use this information to manage better their marketing campaigns and their ROI. So this is happening on an international level, and they're basically they're utilizing this data and segmenting the whole world, so to speak, in the coming years. This will take some of the power from the agencies, I think, or if looked at it from the other point, provide power to it. Are the agencies in this region on board this wave yet here or not? And this is the question I want to ask.
I think it's an interesting one, and maybe also slightly more broadly, maybe what's the role of artificial intelligence or the investment of agencies in AI? It's a topic this event has talked about in the last 2 days tremendously, and it's in everywhere. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on that one. And then we have a question here, so that you don't have to run. Yes, Filip, you have something.
We have some, I'm no expert. We have some form of artificial intelligence already embedded into some of our technology. But I go back to one of my first points about labeling. We tend to like to use fancy words and trend words and just blow them out of proportion, because these things, irrespective of how technology moves, will take time. I still remember, I probably went for 4 years to the Festival of Media. Each year, mobile was going to be, that's going to be the year of mobile. That's going to be, and finally it tipped. Finally it gets to a point like a hockey stick, and it tips. We're nowhere close to that in AI, but definitely that's something that we'll have to build up front for sure.
But Starcom did do something, right? They stopped all spending on events and conferences to focus on Marcel, right?
Starcom Dubai?
Publicis, globally.
Just checking.
Another question. We had a question just there.
Actually, it isn't the same spirit, but because lately in the media, you can read about AI taking over the role of media planners, and they will tell you how the agencies, as media agencies, evolved from being consultants to clients to middlemen. And as such, AI can easily take over the role of media planners of today. And it's going to be the end of media agencies as we know them because of the AI introduction to that. So I just wanted to know
There you go, Elda. You wanted that question, so I'll give it to you. Is this the end of agencies as we know them?
So is this the question?
No, the question was today that artificial intelligence could replace the role of the planner because it has all this data and it can optimize really well, maybe even better than a human could, and disintermediate, remove the middleman, which is the agency today, if I understood your question correctly. And then you pushed it further to the point of saying, well, the agency exists in the future if all of this can be automated.
The agency that we know today, yes. But doesn't
will not
mean
exist.
The agency that we know today will not exist in the future. For sure. But no business that you know today will exist in the future.
Absolutely.
Oh, love it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would love to be part of the era where this has a major change or influence going forward. I just want to add one thing that we haven't spoken about, and I know this is ArabNet, and we should all seem as if everything we do is digital. But there's still a big room for offline, and digital is not the same in every single market. And all of us have MENA titles, although MENA doesn't exist on a map. But you look at the different countries, and the infrastructure is so different, and we can't just forget about offline. And sometimes, doing certain things that worked in the past and continue to work, we should not just completely abandon them. Saudis are going to be watching cinema for the first time since 1979. Last time they went to the cinema, they were watching Spider-Man and Superman and Star Wars and Blade Runner, and guess what's in the movies today? Same shit. So, having certain things not change is not necessarily a bad thing.
True. But today, even when we were sitting with Christine Aswad from Dunkin' Donuts, she was talking about how she's bringing data to the world of retail, to the world of offline. People are using beacons. People are being able to customize service when you show up. They know who you are. So I can't say that digital is not even invading the retail space. There is no space where digital will not invade. Sure. That I am confident of. And I know I run ArabNet, but that's another question from the audience. And then we're gonna wrap up shortly. Do I have a time? Sorry? 2 minutes? So one more question? And a question right there. Does anyone else have a burning question? I know my team will not want me to do this, but
Hello, good
does anyone
afternoon.
else have a burning question?
The traffic jam outside is insane.
Good, so maybe Alex, you'll be our last.
My question would be, so far in your agencies, do you own any kind of proprietary technology that is supporting marketing automation, integration of different kinds of creative media and PR to create that data that you want to use to improve your services?
Yes.
Do you own proprietary technology that can be used for marketing optimization within your firms?
Yes, sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Was there another part of the question?
No,
That was
unfortunately,
it.
I was just checking.
Okay, clearly our panelists do have proprietary technologies. So maybe we'll just wrap up with one quick question to the audience. Since we asked our panelists, the agency as we know it will not be the same in the future. I'm curious, maybe we can answer the question of, do we think that artificial intelligence, data, technology as we know it today will cut out the agency from the advertising value chain? If you agree with that statement, please raise your hand. If you disagree with that statement, please raise your hand. Okay, great. So our audience, our panelists are happy.
Thank you, audience.
I think it's been a very dynamic, very interesting conversation. Challenging to be talking about really the edge of where we are in this industry. Lots of technologies will be changing the whole value chain and the role for sure. And look forward to having this conversation maybe at ArabNet Beirut, 2025. Or maybe we'll have this virtually on VR by then.
According to you, we're not here then.
So thank you very much to our panelists for joining us. Thank you to the audience. Thank you.